Grant Cardone, you were wrong about renting. You guys, I spent 8 years renting a home. 8 years. 8 freaking years. That's crazy because I was listening to Grant Cardone. Now, I'm not saying what Grant is saying is wrong or right for you, and with all due respect to Grant, that works for Grant. But for me, it only worked for so long. And at the beginning, it was great, guys. I mean, I was out there. We rented some really nice houses. We had this house on the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean. We had this big old castle house that we lived in with it was massive. It was 6,000 square feet, had an indoor sauna. It was huge, right? And then we went to this beautiful 3-story, like modern house that overlooked the ocean. And then we went next door to another 3-story modern house that overlooked the ocean. And these were all multi-million-dollar houses. And Grant's right. The mortgage is much higher than my rent was. Some of these houses that we were living in, the mortgages were like $14,000, $15,000, and we were only paying $8,000, $9,000. However, the house that we lived on that overlooked the ocean on the cliff, well, they sold that house, and we had to move 2.5 years in. The second house, that big castle house I told you about with the indoor sauna, they sold that house too. When we moved into the house a month later, they listed it. We dealt with showings, we dealt with having to move again, and then we moved to the other 3-story home only for us to get a notice saying that they're selling that house, and guess what we had to do? Move literally right next door to another rental. And you guys, I realized something. As cool as it wasn't that cool. You see, moving sucks, and we moved a lot. I think I dragged my poor wife, to 8 different locations. We rented 8 different houses. That's insane. After a while, you get tired of moving. Not only that, I also noticed some friction in our marriage. I noticed some friction because we never had a home of our own. We were never able to really settle in. We would move in and we would start to settle in, but we couldn't do anything of our own to the home. We couldn't really express ourselves the way we wanted to the house, right? Like design it the way we woulda, or the way we could, or the way we wanted to. And when we would, they would sell the house only for us to lose a whole bunch of money in improvements that we didn't do to our own home. So after a while, it didn't make sense. And another thing, I saw a lot of my friends buying houses when I was choosing not to buy houses. And they were making a lot of money on appreciation. They were able to buy, my buddy Alex bought a $450,000 home that he sold for $600,000, and then went and bought a $900,000 that he sold for $1.1, and then bought $1 million that's worth like $1.5, right? Like there's a ladder to it, right? And had I start all over again, going through this scenario that I went through, I would buy a house. I would buy a house early on, and I would own that house, and I would then sell it and then move up the ladder, or I would house hack. For those of you that know what house hacking is, I would go to like a duplex or a triplex and buy the duplex or triplex, live in one unit, rent out the other 2 so they're paying for my mortgage till I have enough cash where I can go buy the home that we want. Now, mind you guys, 10 years after me being in the business, I finally bought my wife and I a beautiful home, right? And it's everything that she wanted, and it's perfect. But it went through a lot of years of sacrifice. I spent close to $1 million renting. That's insane. That is insane over the last 10 years. And so one thing I can tell you, well, let's see. Is that $1 million? Let's add it up. Let's just add it up. I don't want to lie to you guys, right? Let's add it up. So let's just say it was $8,000 times 12 times 2. So, that's $192 in just 2 years, right? So, yeah, I would say close to about $600,000, $700,000, maybe $800,000, maybe not at $1 million, but in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we spent renting where we could have owned our own home. And thank God at the time we didn't have any children, because I can only imagine how hard that would have been to have to move them away from their friends, away from their, the environment that they know. So don't get caught up in the media. Get caught up in what you do. Get caught up in your family. What's best for you? What's best for your wife? What's best for your current situation? Then that'll determine if you rent or if you buy. And as some of us, we have to go rent at the beginning. We have to rent to establish our credit, to establish our income, to establish what we need to do to go buy. But don't get stuck renting. Don't go acquire a bunch of liabilities where your income to debt ratio is so messed up that you have so much debt that you can't buy. So for all of you, the nugget is look at your current situation. And if your current situation screams for you to buy a home, buy it sooner than later. I want to appreciate you guys for tuning in. I hope you learned something from this. This is my personal experience. Grant, I love everything that you do, brother. Not making you wrong in any way, shape, or form. I love all your books. This one opinion didn't work for me, but it works for other people. I'm curious to know what works for you. If you're currently renting or did you decide not to rent and did you own, what's been your experience? Comment below. Thank you guys for joining in. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Adrian Hernandez. We'll see you on the next episode. Let's go.